Welcome to episode 42 of the FoodGrads Podcast, the podcast where we explore careers in the food, beverage, and agricultural industries. I'm your host, Veronica, a molecular science graduate student and career partner with FoodGrads. This week on the podcast, I interviewed Tina Gettis, Business Development and Communication Manager for the Institute of Food Safety and Health. IFSH is a one-of-a-kind applied food science research consortium comprised of Illinois Institute of Technology, IIT, the U.S. Food and Drug Administration, FDA, and the food industry. In collaboration with the FDA, they provide stakeholders with the opportunity to develop and exchange knowledge, experience, and expertise in the areas of food safety, food defense, food processing, and nutrition. In this episode, Tina talked to me about her role at IFSH and the career steps that she has taken in order to get there. As we walk through Tina's career journey, she gave me the lowdown on an array of food safety related jobs like auditing, quality assurance, and supply chain QC. Tina also talked to me about why she decided to go back to school and get her master's degree and why it actually benefited her with the timing after already working in the industry. Two of the major themes that were brought up in this episode were curiosity and leadership. Tina talked to me about how curiosity has helped drive her career progression and what exactly is leadership. People like to throw that word around, but Tina really explained what the qualities of a leader should have and what they exemplify, and what that looks like in the context of food safety. Finally, Tina gave advice on what students should be doing if they want to get into food safety. So enough with that introduction. Let's get on with the show. Excellent. So thank you, Tina, for taking the time to come on the show today on this lovely sunny afternoon for both of us, to my understanding. And I'm excited to round out our week with a really good conversation.
And thank you very much for having me, Veronica. And I'm excited about our conversation as well.
Amazing. And I always want to put more spotlight on the food safety realm because the more I hear about things that are going on in jobs with purpose and just thinking about if someone wants to go to the food industry, safety is like the place for that. So I want to dive into that today.
Sounds good. I'm ready to go.
Excellent. So let's get us started first by talking up to us more about what you do.
Yes, sure. To date, I am working for Illinois Tech. It's called IFSH. It's the Institute for Food Safety and Health. And what my role is, I am the manager of business development and communications. And what that entails is me being able to work with a lot of different industry folks in the research area, in food safety, in quality. There's a lot of things that we discuss, and it also includes the government, which is FDA, which also sits in our building. So we have a lot of discussions, a lot of projects, research projects that go on between the industry and the government. And I also had some of the communications there, reaching out to folks on LinkedIn, Instagram, and things like that. But my main purpose is to always be networking and to bring in new members and work with existing members of IFSH.
It's pretty cool. That is. And as you were talking, one of the things that I thought about is as someone who's a student in the academics, I forget about food safety and how food safety is also studied from the avenue of universities. And that's maybe, correct me if I'm wrong, where some of the industries get their parameters and those types of things. Could you speak to more about Illinois Tech in regards to food safety and what that department looks like, and just give us a better understanding of where Illinois Tech fits in that area?
Yes, definitely. So just to give you a little bit of background, when it comes to food safety in the industry and when it comes to teaching food safety at a college, everything comes down and it's regulated through the government, per se FDA. Once they come up with regulations of what food safety is supposed to look like, then that trickles down to industry folks and in turn trickles down to courses at universities and what
Okay.
they look at as courses to prepare the students to understand food safety. One of the things we did realize, me being in industry and then coming to the school, there's a lot of fundamentals of food safety that the schools may not dive into today. But overall, what the research is, the chemistry, the biology of it, doing food research, different types of food research, but that big component of food safety, diving in really deep in food safety, that's one thing that I've noticed that's missing to date.
Okay. That's something I've also heard spoken from other professionals I've been with, that there is that disconnect between, strangely, between the academic side and going into industry. And so, with that being said, what does it look like in terms of a department or food safety at Illinois Tech? I guess I'm still trying to wrap my head against.
So we don't have a specific department for food safety. We have a, say, within our department, someone who handles food safety that works with, just like I do, work with the different industry folks to understand what's happening in the industry so that we can help them as a company or communicate that with our FDA counterparts here at IFSH so we can understand what needs to happen. What does FDA think about the next step of food safety? What can we do as different industries to help? It's just a component of IFSH, but a specific food safety department at Illinois Tech, it doesn't exist, but we do have the Food Safety and Technology Master's Program. Again, that dives into the micro, the chemistry, and things like that, the kind of research part of it, but it doesn't really go into details of what food safety is in an industry setting.
Okay, that clears it up, because that's, I guess it falls a little bit like with my, where I am at Ryerson, where we don't have a food. Okay, I take that back. We do have a food science department, but my research lab looks at, I'm part of technically the chemistry and biology program,
Mm-hmm.
and we study food science in our department, but it's not necessarily coursework that I'm getting. We're actually performing the research, which relays to uh, the different applications, so to say.
That is correct. It's the same here. Yes.
Okay, see, that clears things up. Okay, so with that being said, I could imagine that you found this role because, in part, because you've had a lot of industry experience and you've seen the maneuvers where it's gone. And I think this would be a good time to bring up how you got to this position if you wanted to talk more about that.
Sure. So I started my career in, I should say, food manufacturing in 1998 with Boca Burger. But then Kraft Foods actually bought out Boca Burger. And then I was introduced from a little tiny company with probably 10 folks to this big, huge Kraft Foods company. And I slowly got introduced into how everything works, which was good for me because I started in an area where it was just basically all communications. And then I moved to an area of procurement where all the ingredients come. So understanding that, how they choose the companies that supply all their ingredients to make the product. And then I moved to R&D, and then that was the understanding of how everything works, going back to what you're doing, the research part of it, working with researchers, and then going into regulatory, like nutrition regulatory, and combining the research area with the regulatory. Once the product's created, then it has to be made and then packaged. So how do we look at nutrition facts panels? And then I went into import export regulatory. So understanding how that works, sending products out, getting products in. And then I moved to auditing. So I was able to go into auditing and truly understand how products were being made. And because of the auditing experience, that means I'm looking at all the food safety things, all the quality issues. How can we fix these things? So I was able to see everything from where the ingredients come in to where it actually gets shipped out the door, from making it. So seeing that entire process and then grasping and understanding a lot more than I did before. And then after that, moved to a role that was me handling all of our co-manufacturers, which our internal sites make and produce products for craft. But then we also were hiring co-mans to do the same, understanding that they had to follow our regulations in addition to following government regulations and state regulations. I was at Kraft Foods from 2000 to 2014. And then I took on a role as a quality manager at a small supplier. It was actually one of our suppliers from Kraft. I stayed there for a couple of years. And so now I'm in it every single day, pretty much sometimes 7 days a week.
Oh
So I'm
gosh.
seeing everything from beginning to end and seeing all of the things about food safety, all the things about quality, things that could go wrong, everything that I audited. I'm now in it on a daily basis. And there was one thing that I was able to see from there is that company did not really grasp what food safety was. Their biggest purpose was to get product out. It was just making sure that the quality was good, but they weren't thinking about food safety. So I went in to train them on food safety and in a way to so they could understand why it's so important and they could connect to it. And I thought that was one thing that was like truly missing. And then I came to Pepsi and I spent 5 years at PepsiCo. Started off with corporate food safety, and that's when FSMA was happening. So we dove right in to do a lot of FSMA work with a lot of sites. We went internationally to teach people to help them get their programs together because at that time, FDA was getting on the road to start auditing FSMA requirements at that time.
Sorry to
Um,
cut you off there. I just wanted, for those who might not know, could you say what FISMA is, just so we have a little bit of context?
Anyone who works in the industry will know that it's really a deep dive into your materials that come to do risk assessments, creating a robust preventive control plan. And that involves biological, chemical, and physical attributes of each ingredient in each product that's being produced. So that was a lot of work in that area. And then I moved on to supplier quality role. And that again dives into procurement and the ingredients that come in, kind of auditing each company, each supplier that supplies those ingredients to us and looking at the risk associated with each of those ingredients. And then I went back to a role that I had at Kraft Foods to manage co-manufacturers. And then I left there and in 2021 and which brought me to Illinois Tech. And the reason I moved to Illinois Tech is because I've worked with some of the people here already, and I wanted to do something a little bit different. I wanted to be able to connect with different industry folks and see how my industry experience could help them not only in what's going on in food safety, but even on the research side. Because with my experience, I'm able to understand what they're looking for and then help find solutions as a group of a bunch of industry folks in FDA. And having FDA working collaboratively with them is a real good plus for us because
Right.
we're able to pick their brains. They can only give us so much information as the government, if we're headed in the right direction, they're very open to help us with that.
That is, wow. It really, like, the thing that I'm getting from your experience is that you really have this overview of the food safety aspects because you've been in the role, seen it from all these different areas. And the
Mhm.
more that I have these conversations, the more I realize that my view of the industry is just like this little sliver of all these different places that it can go. And there's different places I could ask and all that, but I have to just share because I've been thinking about this a lot, is the idea about getting to the FDA and getting to the government level, and the government's making these food safety regulations, rules that as a as a young professional or someone who's done like QC, I take it for granted if the regulation or it says this is 50 degrees, that's the kill temperature, or this must be this way, but not really questioning, well, how did that come to be? Who are the individuals involved in researching that? This is the regulation. And it seems because of your experience coming into this Illinois Tech, you can kind of gauge it from, I feel like you're rambling, but
No, go right ahead.
yeah, but I guess I'm just saying that from the industry, you have that perspective of knowing uh, this is what they're looking for. And then, like you said, bridging that gap towards working with the government. And just, I think that's such a cool way of taking all of your experiences together and using it in a way that I would never think conventionally someone would think to do with it eventually.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Sorry. Sorry, I just my head's kind of wrapping because I've been learning through my own program about in Canada about the Senate and how laws pass and all that. And just I've been really starting to get interested in this idea about regulations and just
Yes.
how those come. It's so cool.
So I would say, I know we're like off cuff here, but I would
Yeah.
say it's one of the things that we're kind of doing. We have this subgroup called toxicology as a subgroup, kind of one of our working groups that we have, and we invite different industry folks to join some, our members. So one of the things that I'm leading right now is a group for talent development for toxicologists and understanding it's like you go through this program, but how is it going to prepare you to work in the industry or with the government, or even if you want a role at a school. So we're coming up with some ways to how we're going to either put on some type of webinar or a mini course for students, actually, to teach them leadership, communication, collaboration, networking, and things like that. So we're like really excited. We're going to start with the toxicologist, but we want to expand it to any type of student. And that's going to prepare them for what the industry is looking for, what the government may be looking for. And to your point, knowing the regulations, I'm going to tell you that's going to be a good thing for you because it'll tie a lot of things together.
Let's actually talk a little bit more about that, if you don't mind, in terms of this creating this program for these students. And one of the things that you mentioned was leadership. And I feel like that word gets thrown around. You want to put it on resume. I did leadership, but what does leadership and how do you teach for it? What does that look like to you?
Yes. So leadership is not just, okay, so I'm leading something, right? So leadership, in a sense, is you have to be one, an active listener. You have to be able to work autonomously. You have to be good at communication, good at collaboration and working with other people. A lot of these skills that you find in a work setting or sometimes a school setting, it comes together as a leader. So just think of, for example, you have let's say your parents. So they're leaders of the family. What's their job? What can they do? They listen. They kind of let you know what you can and cannot do. They explain things to you. They educate you on certain things. They collaborate with their other spouse to make sure that everything is communicated. It's there's both of us, but this is what we need done. Thinking of it that way, there's a lot of things that come with it, not just you working on a project, hey, I'm leading this team, I'm telling them what to do, I have this list of things that we need to get done. It's a lot of things that come with that. The communication, collaboration, active listening, being able to stand strong in what your belief is and what needs to be done. That's one good thing that's a leader. It's this is the right thing to do, and you're not going to sway from it because this is it. And communicating that in a way that everyone can understand, but do it in a way to where well received. Does that make sense?
That does. That's actually a really interesting way of thinking about it in the terms of parents, because we might all argue against our own parents, but that's
Yeah.
not the point. But if you step aside and just look at the pure things that they're doing as a parent, like you said, with the spouse, you're collaborating. You have to have leeway with one parent, give and take. There's that. If like it's good parents listening to what your child needs, and it's not like there's a rule book written that hey, your child needs to do A, B, and C in order
Mhm.
to get this personality trait. So I think that's actually a nicer way to just think, do I have these skills? Think about good parents, because that is for a lot of people, their role models and how they've been raised is the skills they take in their life a lot of times. So I like
Mhm.
that. I like that.
Thank you. And for the note, FSMA, Food Safety Modernization Act, I always have a brain on that one. I don't know why. I want to call the M something else, so I'm not going to say it.
Thank you. Thank you. Good for that, because yeah, that's you get so used to acronyms that you just I know what it does, but I don't know. Blah, blah. Yeah, good.
Yes.
Uh, and talking more about, because we were before we were recording the show, we talked a little bit about this, and from a student perspective, is that for students, it is hard to walk into a new role and lead. And we just talked about these other skills about leading, but let's think about if you were, mentoring a student who's going either into their first job out of university or college or going into their internship. How should they be conducting themselves in a way that they're leading per se, but they don't have that experience to back it up?
So, and this would go for anyone. When anyone's coming into a new role, especially students, they don't have previous experience. So, being able to connect with the people that's like in your group or other people outside of your group, it's going in, walking in, and starting to network. That is a big thing to start doing. I know you're coming into a role, you don't know anyone, and you have this job that you need to do, but networking is going to be so beneficial starting off because you're going to be able to learn so many different things. For example, you don't have to work with students that come right out of college and they get in the research, but they know nothing about the food safety or how things work on the other sides outside of them being in lab and doing stuff. So what I did was had a group, I had a meeting because I was new to this whole project that they were doing. So what I did was talk to everyone and even the ones that were had been at the company to understand how things should work because sometimes you get so engrossed in the research part that you forget about the other things that's
Right.
happening around you. So being able to network with those different areas, for say I was in supply chain, you have a person from R&D, so that R&D person should be connecting with procurement person, the supply chain person, some R&D folks, and maybe a supplier quality, different groups outside to where they can understand the connection, the regulatory part of it. So you can, all these little areas in this project, you need to understand where and why they need what they need when they need it. Why a project, if you're moving it forward, it has to stop here because there's certain things that are missing. Let's tackle it at the beginning. So if we all get together and talk about what's needed at the beginning of the project, then we won't have any bottlenecks as we're going through the project. Knowing who you're working with, why they're asking, at the end of the day, it's the what do they need? How can I give them what they need based on the parameters that we have to work in. So networking is a very critical part of coming into a role and just being so new at it and not even having any industry experiences.
That's really good advice. And that reminds me of a past guest that we had on the show, Amelia LaPlante. I think it was episode 10 for those who are wondering. She had mentioned that one of the things she likes to do as an R&D product developer is every Friday, she would find someone in the workplace and buy them a coffee for lunch and just talk to them and ask them what they do. So she has that all over rounded idea of the whole workplace. And it sounds like you use the word networking, and that could even be a little intimidating for others. But honestly, it sounds like just getting to know your coworkers. And I feel I really like that because it sounds though not only will you get a better knowledge, break the ice with individuals, but it could also just make your workplace environment better instead of isolating yourself at lunch, like eating by yourself and all that. This could really take you into options you never even considered and just really just having a better work experience.
Yeah, then you get a chance to learn a lot of different things as well. And that is a good idea. Yeah.
And it's also a good idea that you point out do it early on because I think a lot of people might know, even with any workplace that they're in, that if you start to get into a habit of not doing that, it becomes much harder as the time goes on to build that connection because
Mm-hmm.
it's just awkward because it's like, well, I've been here for 5 months. Why are you talking to me? Like you put more barriers for yourself than if you just went and tried to do it initially.
That is absolutely correct. And I still do that today. Any new job that I go into or any new department that I go into, although if I've worked at the company for so long, still if I'm going to a different department, I want to connect with different people so I can understand how things work. And outside of that, so I understand how everything came together. And I think it's like in my mindset that I do that because I want to understand so I can connect all the dots. And I think students coming in should plan out what their career looks like and what they want to accomplish out of their career before they even leave school so they can start mapping out how they need to network within that company, understand what that company does and the different areas so they can start talking to people when they get there.
Was this something that you've always done throughout your career, or was there a certain event that sparked this?
Now, it's the way I am because it's being curious. And that's one of the things we talked in one of our meetings yesterday. Students need to be a little bit more curious about other things than outside of what they're doing. That drive of wanting to learn more. And I've always been that way since I've been a kid. Being called, oh, you're just an overachiever. No, I literally want to know what's going on.
Yeah.
Seriously, I just want to know, you know.
Well,
Yeah, and it's been that way. And
uh,
I encourage students before they get out, be more curious.
sorry, I'm just letting that sit because I think to be honest, I think it's something that gets taken out of a lot of us. Unfortunately, to be curious, just I talk a lot about this to people that I feel like we run out of so much little time and all that,
Mm.
that you don't have that time to let yourself be curious in school. Well, maybe you really found this topic interesting. Too bad the week's over and we're on to the next topic. But I think as you get more into your career and out of that standardized courses, that
Mhm.
there is that time to grow and explore and be curious and don't let yourself get so caught up in research because I was talking to one of my lab mates and they're like almost done their PhD and they're like, I don't know what's going on in the industry. And I'm like, are you crazy? I was like,
Yeah.
I was just so taken back because I've always, this is your next steps going into industry. Aren't you curious about where you could go? Like, it's so exciting.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah, and some students will wait to the last minute, then they'll reach out and struggling to get there because they didn't take that opportunity to do it beforehand during the few years before they even graduated to try and understand all of that. It would do students a disservice not to do that ahead of time.
Yeah. And so I'm just looking what you just talked about with your career path, and I'm starting to see the connections about being curious. Just looking at your job titles, I could almost see imagining how you were thinking about, for example, going from the associate quality specialist to a lead auditor. I could imagine, again, correct me if I'm wrong, but you saw the role and thought, oh, this would be really curious to see how the whole organization works like this. So I'm going to go explore this and I'll get a better understanding of how this all works together.
And that's so funny too, because it's how this worked. So I was able to talk to someone about me being interested in auditing. I was just curious about how it works and what they did. So it was one of my mentors that I was talking to, and she was the VP of Quality and Food Safety at the time. And so she said, this is what I'll do. I'll loan you to the department for 3 months.
Oh,
And then
cool.
as you're still doing your job, do this little project for them. You'll get a sense of what they do, talk to the people there, and you can understand. And then I asked one of the lead auditors at the time, hey, can I go in and audit with you just to see how it works? And he said, sure. And I did that. I wanted to see if it was something that I would be interested in for my next job. And as it turned out, an opening came and I was able to slip right into the role because I understood it. I still had to go through a little training and get certification for being a lead auditor, but it was so worth it. And one of the things that I realized in, doing that is I'm tapping into those things that are easy for me, like seeing things, that are wrong or that needs to be changed or needs improvements. It's part of my OCD. So I'll tell you that. Yes. So
You
it
said
kind of
it to
like,
your advantage.
exactly. And that's exactly what I did. And when students talk about they don't have much time, they have to get into the school. So imagine me. So as late 40s, when I started my master's, and I was
Okay.
and then in 2003 or so, when I did my bachelor's, I working full time. Actually, when I did my bachelor's, I had two jobs. I was working at Kraft, had a part-time job. I don't know why I had the part-time job. Don't ask me why. But then
Crazy.
yes, and then I was going to school, but I was still curious. So I decided I want to get my master's now, in
Mhm.
close to 50 years old. I went back to school at Illinois Tech to get my master's of food safety and technology. And I have with a business specialization. And so I wanted to tap into the business part of it. So it's like being curious it shouldn't stop you. No matter how busy you are, you can take an hour or so just to read up on something because you're curious about it. It's like really being dedicated to what you want to do. That's going to get you further. And that's what happened within my careers for each job. It's like I wanted to understand what it was and I went to talk to people about it.
I love that. And there's things I have to point out. The first one being is I love that you had a manager and you, as you said, you put them as you said, mentor. You felt comfortable that you could mention that you were even curious about auditing. And I think that is a good sign of a good manager because they're not trying to hide you from all these different opportunities. Like they
Hmm.
actively helped you. And that's a good way for someone who might not want to leave a company to maybe find a different role that works for them and it better works for what they do. Maybe it's testing the waters with the manager, it's different, but if you can find someone, be open and just say that curiosity, like he just said. But the other thing I wanted to point out is I can't believe that we talked about this in our little pre-talk and
Yeah,
about you doing the masters is just being curious and you took the step forward in doing a master's degree and I just want to say that's commendable. I think that we think about, to be honest, a lot of university students being right out of undergraduate, but it really goes to show if you're curious, education's there no matter what step you are in your career.
absolutely. And thank you very much. It was a long road. It was hard, but it was absolutely worth it.
Mhm.
Absolutely.
And so I guess that with that being said, you decided to go back. Like, I'm curious now about why you decided to go for Illinois Tech for their food safety.
I knew of the school. I was introduced to Illinois Tech when I was at Kraft Foods. One of my friends there, she was going for her master's, but then I wasn't ready for it yet. But I looked into the school, looked at everything they did, and we, as Kraft Foods, was also a member for IFSH in the department where I work today. So I knew that there was something there because the person that is on the board, he has been there. iFish was created. So he's been there since then. And I knew that they had something going for them. And then understanding the collaborations that they have with, FDA and with other industry folks, it was like, okay, so there's something there. So they must be doing something. So it's like, this will be the school where I just go ahead and get my master's. And in addition, my husband also got his master's, got his BA there as an electrical engineer. So he was there first. I was there much later. And then the funny thing is, I got my BA at DePaul University. He got his business degree at DePaul. So we flip-flopped.
Nice.
So that's just a little side note.
That's cool. That was cool. Actually, I hope you don't mind me asking, but I feel a lot of people feel this is actually one of the thoughts that I had is if I don't do a master's degree now, I'm never going to have it. And would you be open to maybe talking about family? Because I feel like that's something that we don't really talk about much with these types of decisions. And did your family have any bearing on you deciding to go for your master's or going back to school, or
No,
you're comfortable with that?
oh, absolutely. So it wasn't, my family had no bearing on it. It's just for me. Going to make 2 points here. So for me, one, I wanted to go back, but I wanted to be the right time where I felt that I could handle it, right? Having a full-time job, and at that time there was a lot of work on my plate. So I wanted to make sure that I was mentally prepared and that I would be committed and not just give up at some point because it is a lot. Going back when you're working full-time. And the second thing is me being in the industry and understanding it helped me more than anything than me just going from an undergraduate degree and then going right into a master's and not having that experience. It just did so much more for me if I didn't have the experience first and got my master's. And it's like, okay, I got a master's and I get it. But I was able to take my experience that I'm like right in and apply it to what I needed to learn in my master's degree. Because a lot of it I was already doing and a lot of it I already understood. So it's just, this is perfect opportunity now. Since I have so much experience now, it just made it a little bit easier for me to just glide in and understand everything.
So was it a course-based master's degree or a research-based?
So I chose it's the course-based one and not do a research project. That one I couldn't handle. And I knew that because I was tossing back and forth. Okay, do I need to write a paper on this? Do I need to do this? Or can I just do the course-based one and be okay mentally, walk out of it that I'm okay.
You're right.
Yeah, I struggled with both because I wanted to do that. I was like, no, it was not feasible for me. And I didn't have like small kids or anything because my son was already grown and was my husband was here and he was working a lot. So I literally had enough time to do what I needed to do. But the thing was really juggling the work because work was more, but then finding that time to do my homework and really focus on that when I needed to.
Okay. Okay. That again, it just shows with your experience and knowing yourself that you recognized ahead of time, hey, this is not going to work for me. And you chose something that did end up working for you and you were able to slide by and I'm sorry, I don't mean slide through the program. You just get into a space where you knew you could really do well. So,
Yes,
okay.
absolutely.
Yeah. No, I could imagine, I go back to your auditing and I could imagine how that role especially could just benefiting. And if we could just spend like a quick few moments talking about auditing and just like what that role looks like, because to my understanding right now, they're looking for a lot of auditors because a lot of these, like a lot of people don't have the skills to do it. So could you just maybe spend a little bit of time talking about what that experience is like and just go from there?
Yes, in auditing, one, you have to understand the regulations, like from the government. You'll have different certification bodies that create kind of a list of things that you should be looking for when you're on an audit and you get certified in that areas, like they call them GFSI. And so there's like these different schemes under that coincides with what government wants for their regulations. So again, trickle down FDA. Then you have regulations that are put in place that you have to be certified against. And then you have your company that they take those and say, so what do we need to do as a company to adhere to these regulations? What do we need to put in place? So having the understanding, one, of the industry, of the regulations, of the certifying bodies that are out there and what they're looking for, but truly understanding processes, understanding the food safety aspect of it, because when you're asking questions, you have to understand what that question means and not just ask a question. So when it comes to like time and temperature, if you're auditing someone, hey, let me see your records for time and temperature, definitely tell if they've missed something, hey, this was off, this didn't meet your parameters that you put in place for this. So what happened here? And they need to be able to see those things and understand why it's off, or look at a part of the building and see, hey, you guys had a leaking roof. What did you guys do to this? Look at documentations to see if they did the correct testing of it, of when the roof leak and what type of testing they did to make sure that it didn't do anything, contaminate any of the product, or did it leak onto any open product? Was the leak over any processing a line where there was open product where it dripped on that and then you guys just let it go? Understanding so much more. So diving into auditing, you truly have to understand a lot. It's not just going in and getting a list of things that you have to check for. You can have a list of questions, but there's also, just like you're doing here, there's also a counter question based on what that person tells you or based on what you see. And there's training out there to become an auditor. So there's companies out there that actually train you and certify you to become an auditor. So you can learn that. I was fortunate enough to be able to work at a company where I shadowed people, but I wanted to not just be an auditor, I wanted to be a lead auditor. So I went and got my certification. I was like, I'm going to do you one better. I'm just going to get this now because this is where I want to go. So
Cool.
that way I learned even more. So I recommend, if anyone wants to become an auditor, and if you're not at your current company or shadowing someone that is, it's take a course to take a certification to become an auditor. That will help you understand a lot more than you do today.
And for the certification, is it like you're just saying about external certification bodies in order to
Yes.
find that? Okay. Okay.
Yes. Yeah. You can literally look it up, Google it or whatever, and there's good companies that will come up.
Okay. See, and now that also things makes me think about how being at a larger company, this could be a benefit to someone if they want to try to explore a role that they might not have as much room in a smaller company to maybe explore a role like this.
Hmm.
So I'm just thinking that.
Yes. So smaller companies too, every company should be doing their own internal auditing. So that's a given. So we don't want for these bodies to just come in and say, hey, you're doing this, you need improvement here, blah, blah, blah. But we recommend, and based on regulations, every company should have their own internal audit program set because it's part of those certified bodies, they tell you to create an internal one because you don't want any surprises. You want someone at your company to be on top of these things every single day or every single week to go and audit your own site so you can understand what's going on, so you can correct it right away, so you can get on top of it and make sure that everything's running smoothly. You don't have any major food safety gaps to where if the government came in, FDA came in and audited your plant, that you get what they call a 483. That means that everybody will know because they post those 483s on their site that you have a food safety issue.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yes. So that's every company wants to avoid that.
Mhm.
Therefore, having an internal audit program will help. That sometimes gives people a sense of what it may look like for an auditor come in because you still have the same tools they do.
Oh, okay. See, this makes
Yes.
sense now as well, you
Yeah.
being a curious person of why this matches up, because a lot of people think of auditors as like the mean, bad people that are just trying to be out to get everyone. But it really sounds
Mhm.
like the people who are auditing are just curious and they're asking these questions because they're curious to know why are you not like, why is this not working out if you're supposedly following like what you think you're following? So it's like that detective and really just following what you're
Exactly.
I like looking at it that way because it makes it less intimidating.
Yes, and you get a chance to, in some auditors, granted they are really mean,
Mhm.
and for me, I wanted to have a relationship with the sites that I audited because I wanted us to work together. So although I found these things and I have to write it up, but let's talk about how, while I'm here, how we can fix it. What I'm looking for from you to fix it. Although you have to write a report about your corrective actions and how you've completed it, how you finished it, how you have put in place preventive actions so it won't happen again. I still want to talk about it because we're in this together. If you're working for us as a company, that means that we need to make sure that you're on our same page, which means we need to work together as opposed to me barking at you and telling you what to do. Let's find, a happy medium here.
Mm. And then it goes back to what you were saying before and just your nature of making relationships and it's not just limit. Yeah. So that's cool. That's really cool.
Absolutely.
And
Thank you.
because we're coming down to the close to the end of our conversation, I definitely want to make sure that I get this in. The question that I always like to ask my guests is let's specialize this to food safety. So, what advice would you give to students looking to enter in the food industry and specifically looking for a career in food safety?
I would say if there's opportunities for you to do either internships or if you know someone in the industry and you want them to just mentor you and talk to you about food safety and getting into the industry, take the opportunity. And I'm on LinkedIn. I'm open for that for any conversations because it's going to benefit you in the end. Overall, just going in cold, it's not helpful because you're going to get lost and you're going to be a little bit behind, the eight ball walking in. Again, just having those conversations. Try to network. LinkedIn is a good place to do that. There's so many companies out there and there's so many people out there that's willing to have conversations with students about the industry. It's just a matter of just reaching out. And just when you ask to be a part of someone's LinkedIn, tell them why you want to be a part of their LinkedIn. Not just you just want to be added. What are you looking for from that person? Can they help you? Can they mentor you or give you some insights on things? Take that opportunity to do that.
That's great advice. And it's amazing how LinkedIn has just grown into this amazing platform over the years. And it just continues to be, it's a social network for professionals. But I feel like once you connect with people, it can really positively affect so many aspects of your life. And it's amazing how there's a platform out there that so many professionals actively use. And it's just great.
Yes, it is. And I get students reaching out to me for that very reason. Hey, I saw your LinkedIn and I saw all the experiences you have. Do you have a chance to have a conversation with me? I know we don't know each other. This is what I want. And I'm like, absolutely. And we set up calls.
Nice. So your advice would be for students just keep it brief and but be genuine and like you said, actually say what you want and don't just put your face as a connection. That's the word.
Yes, that is correct. Yes,
Amazing. So I'm going to leave that there. You already jumped to my next question, which would be where can people find you? So clearly it's LinkedIn.
absolutely.
Thank you so much, Tina, for coming on the show. I have learned so much. And again, with the conversations like this, it's really opened my eyes to the industry and connections and where everything fits. And just being curious enough will open up doors for your. That was episode 42 of the FoodGrads Podcast. All the notes to this podcast can be found on the FoodGrads blog or by clicking on the Student and Grads tab on the homepage. There you can find any notes to past or future episodes. Do you know anyone you would like me to interview on the show? Perhaps yourself? Or maybe there's a specific career path you would like me to explore? Then reach out and let me know. You can email me at veronica@foodgrads.com or any of the FoodGrads social media channels. Hope to hear from you. If you were ever wondering about where your career could take you in terms of food safety, then look no further than Tina. I loved how Tina highlighted with her career journey how she's taken many, lateral steps, so to say, in her career journey. And she didn't come out of school saying, I want this job, but instead really followed her curiosity and took it a step at a time and just let that guide her. I think this episode really highlighted something that I've heard about the food industry in that they like to hire and promote within. So if you can find a company as a whole you really enjoy working there, just show that genuine curiosity about things. As you can see from Tina, you never really know where it's going to take you, and you might end up finding something that you really love. To be honest, it sounds kind of fun, and I love the idea of following your curiosity. So I'm happy that Tina was able to highlight that for everyone. Anyways, that's it for this week's episode. Thank you everyone so much for listening, and I will see you next time.